Everything changed in an instant. Have you ever thought that a brief conversation with a coworker could lead to being downgraded after 10 years of dedication? I couldn't believe what I was facing, but it happened. An unexpected performance review, unbelievable criticisms from someone I thought truly understood me. Does everything I've done for the company over the years now mean nothing? What really happened next? Come with me to find out. For the past 10 years, I've worked tirelessly to make sure I'm always on top of my game. The routine, the deadlines, the constant juggling of tasks, it's become second nature to me. I pride myself on my efficiency. Every project, every deadline, checked off with precision. It was never about being average. I strived for excellence, and I delivered. It wasn't just my own work that I kept on track either. When a coworker needed help, I stepped in without a second thought. There was never a time when I didn't go the extra mile to ensure the team succeeded. Clients were always happy with me, and no one ever had a reason to complain. At least that's how I saw it. Over time, I became the one they could count on, not just for work, but for everything else too. The office never lacked warmth, thanks to my efforts. I was the one who decorated the office for holidays, who coordinated the gift-giving and the celebrations. I baked the desserts, organized the thank you notes for our department, and even made holiday baskets for other agencies we worked with. I'd do it all with a smile, because that's just who I was. The glue that held everything together. But recently, everything started to shift. A new policy was introduced at work, and to say it wasn't well received would be an understatement. We were all unhappy about it, but like always, we adapted. After all, it was part of our contract, and we had to make the best of it. But when I was on a call with a coworker, venting a little about the change, I had no idea that my boss was lurking in the background, overhearing my side of the conversation. The call wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Sure, we were all frustrated, but I kept it tame. I pointed out that the change wasn't the end of the world. It was in our contract, after all. We'd get through it, just like we always did. I was just trying to make light of a tough situation. I was not complaining, at least not excessively, but apparently that's not how it was seen. A few days later, I was called into my boss's office for my annual performance review. I was expecting the usual praise. After all, I had been consistently exceeding expectations for years. Instead, I was blindsided. My boss told me that my attitude had become a concern. Apparently, I wasn't cutting it off when my coworkers started to vent. I let them express their frustrations, and that was a mistake. He said I should have told them to call him instead. The way I handled the conversation made me a negative influence, he claimed. He even went so far as to say that if he didn't nip it in the bud now, it could fester and create a toxic work environment. I was stunned. I tried to hold my composure, but the words stung. I had never expected a performance review to turn into a character assassination. I couldn't believe it. A simple vent session with a colleague, something that happens in every office, was being used against me. But the worst part? I felt like everything I had done for the company, every extra effort to make the office a better place, was being thrown away just like that. It felt like my years of hard work, the long hours, and the smiles I'd put on for the team meant nothing. How could something so small cause everything to unravel so quickly? The entire meeting felt like a punch to the gut. I had no words left. After the performance review, I felt like everything had come crashing down. My boss's criticisms kept haunting me throughout the day. I couldn't understand it. What had I done wrong? Why did a simple conversation with a coworker lead to me being judged like that? My attitude was a problem? I had always tried my best, doing things no one asked of me, but now it all seemed meaningless. All I got in return was criticism, not the praise I thought I deserved after 10 years of hard work. When I walked into the office the next morning, the atmosphere felt stifling. Everyone seemed to be going about their work as usual, but I could sense the difference. Their glances flickered toward me, then quickly shifted away when I looked back. Surely they knew what had happened to me, even if no one said anything. It made me feel so out of place and alone. Those silent stares followed me everywhere. I wanted to go back to being the person I once was, the one who was always proactive, always cheerful, but now I couldn't do that anymore. With all these thoughts swirling in my mind, I started keeping my distance from everyone. It wasn't that I didn't want to be involved in office activities, but I just couldn't. How could I continue playing the role of the cheerful one when my efforts were dismissed like that? I couldn't keep pretending to be the person who made everything fun when I felt so underappreciated. I had worked too hard, for too long. All those years of effort couldn't just be forgotten, right? That day, when we went out for lunch, I stayed silent. Normally, I would be the one to lead the conversation, cracking jokes to lighten the mood, but now I couldn't do that. I just sat there, listening to everyone else chat, but not participating. They noticed the change right away. A few tried to talk to me, asking if I was okay, but I just smiled faintly and said I was fine. But I wasn't fine at all. Every word, every glance from them only made me feel more weighed down. When lunch was over, I returned to my desk and sat down. The office was still quiet, but I didn't feel comfortable. I closed my office door, not wanting anyone to come in. I knew it was making things weird, but I couldn't bring myself to engage with anyone. I couldn't go back to pretending that everything was okay when I felt so unfairly treated. Something had changed, and I just couldn't act like nothing had happened. All the effort I had put in for so many years now seemed like it had been in vain. How could I keep pushing forward when my hard work was treated like it meant nothing? But I couldn't stop thinking about it. The confusion, the unfairness, it all left me with this quiet rage. How could someone be reprimanded just for letting a coworker vent? Everyone needs space to unload sometimes, and I was just the one listening. Doesn't everyone feel frustrated and tired from time to time? So why did I have to bear the consequences for it? Day by day, I lived with that tension. Then, a week later, an email about organizing an appreciation week for another department came through. This time I wasn't going to get involved in any of it. I couldn't bear the thought of participating in something when my efforts weren't acknowledged. People started noticing my silence. I knew they were wondering why I wasn't jumping in like I used to, but I had no idea how to explain it. I simply said I didn't have time to get involved anymore and left them to figure it out. The discomfort didn't go away. It lingered. Like a shadow that followed me wherever I went, making it impossible for me to find myself again in my work. The small efforts I used to make now seemed like distant memories. I didn't want to be the person they expected me to be anymore. I didn't want to do any of it, at least not when my efforts weren't being appreciated. A week after the review, everything seemed to get worse. I couldn't stand the feeling of being lost in my own office. People had started noticing the change in me, and even though no one said anything, I could feel their stares, like sparks flying when they glanced at me. No one was asking me about organizing office events anymore. No one was receiving little gifts from me during holidays. It was an oppressive silence. I had always been the one leading every office activity, but now it felt like everything was fading into the background, like a distant memory. What bothered me even more was the silence from my boss. After that meeting, he didn't say a word. I kept waiting for a conversation, an apology, or at least some kind of explanation. But nothing. He kept his distance, as if I were being punished, as if I was no longer capable of doing the things I had been doing for years. That feeling made everything even more frustrating. The entire office seemed to look at me differently, as if I had done something wrong. Then, one day, while walking past the birthday lunch for March celebrations, I noticed the stark difference. The people I had once shared everything with were now avoiding me. They were standing in small groups, laughing and chatting, but I just stood quietly in a corner, watching them. Surely they knew about my performance review, and surely they were judging me. A strange feeling of alienation and loneliness washed over me. I couldn't keep standing on the sidelines like this. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay, but I still tried to hold on to some patience. I told myself that everything would be fine, that after a little time, everyone would forget what had happened. However, this change only made me feel more isolated. A week later, I received an email about organizing an appreciation week for another department. This time, I just couldn't keep pretending. I knew I couldn't get involved in any of it anymore. I didn't want to do anything. Even if it was just contributing a small amount of money or sending a message of goodwill. Those little actions didn't seem to matter anymore when I felt so disregarded. People began to notice. A coworker came up to me and asked, "Why do you seem so different these days?" I just smiled faintly and replied that I didn't have time to participate. But deep inside, a storm was brewing. Was it really that I didn't have time? Or was I trying to avoid everything I once enjoyed because I couldn't bear the feeling of being hurt? I didn't want to speak the truth. I didn't want to make things more tense than they already were, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't continue being the person they expected me to be when I felt so overlooked and discarded. Every time I thought about the performance review, I felt anger and disappointment. How could I continue being the cheerful, positive person when everything I had done was brushed aside like it didn't matter? I didn't know what I was doing anymore. It felt like I was standing at a crossroads where every decision, every action of mine was being driven by emotions I couldn't express. Everything became blurry. Conflicting thoughts kept circling around me, making it impossible to move forward, yet I couldn't go back either. One morning, when I walked into the office, I realized everything had changed completely. The coworkers I once considered friends no longer seemed as warm toward me. The glances that quickly shifted away, the hurried conversations that stopped when I entered the room, it all made me feel like an outsider. Even though no one said anything, I knew they were questioning me, talking about the change in me. The feeling of loneliness in this crowd became more overwhelming by the minute. I tried to hide my frustration, keeping silent, not wanting to create more tension. But inside, a quiet rage began to build. Why should I have to endure this? Why should I stay silent and tolerate being ignored and unappreciated? Didn't I deserve respect and fair evaluation after 10 years of dedication? I kept recalling my meeting with my boss when I couldn't believe the things he said. How could he criticize me for listening to a coworker simply because I didn't cut them off and tell them to call him instead? What had I done wrong? I wasn't the only one dealing with the changes in the company. We all hated it. But why was I the only one called out? This unfairness kept haunting me, and I felt like I was being isolated, the only one seen as a problem. One day, as I walked into the meeting room, I realized that people were starting to turn their attention to me more. Questions like, "Are you okay?" or "What's going on with you?" kept popping up. Each question felt like a blow to my mind, making me feel more disrespected. I couldn't stay silent anymore. It was time to express how I felt. But I didn't want to make things more tense. I didn't want to ruin the office atmosphere. I didn't want to be seen as the difficult one. But at the same time, I couldn't bear the silence and lack of understanding. That day, I received an email from the team about organizing an event for other departments. Once again, I felt a conflict inside. I was used to organizing everything, preparing gifts, doing little things to keep the office atmosphere light and fun, but now I couldn't. I couldn't keep doing it when I felt so disregarded. Was I being selfish by not getting involved? Was I wrong for stepping back from things I used to enjoy doing? But what would happen if I continued pretending everything was fine while my heart was filled with resentment? I couldn't keep being the person they expected me to be. I couldn't keep hiding the anger and hurt inside. It felt like I had lost everything I had worked so hard to build over the years. I felt like I had been pushed to the sidelines, ignored, and that made me more frustrated. Why should I keep doing everything perfectly if no one appreciated it? Why should I keep trying to create joy for everyone when I couldn't find any joy for myself anymore? In the end, I decided not to join in the next conversation or event. I needed space to think about everything that had happened and what my next steps should be. But could I keep going like this? Could I keep staying in this limbo, torn between what I used to be and what I felt I had to become?